They are described as a voice from another world, stringed instruments that survived the Holocaust, now restored and played for audiences across the globe. On February 15th, they will be played by members of the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. Joining me now via video from Istanbul is Violins of Hope co-founder Avshalom Weinstein. Avshalom, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
I am also joined here in studio by Stephen Libman, President and CEO of the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for being here. Violins of Hope is a project that's been around since the mid-90s, started by your father, Amnon Weinstein, who was a professional luthier. He died last March. My condolences. Can you tell us about the project Violins of Hope?
So it started with a lecture in Germany about instruments that my grandfather bought in Israel, in Palestine, just after the war, from people who didn't want to play their German-made instruments. And afterwards, my father spoke on a radio show, and we started getting more and more instruments who were played by Jewish people and also some by non-Jewish people during the war. Some of the instruments were played in ghettos, in camps. Some of the owners survived, some unfortunately died. Today we have about 100 instruments in the collection. We are still getting more instruments, and we are touring quite a lot, doing many concerts, lectures, and a lot of educational programs.
What is the symbolism behind that?
So, for many years, we had survivors who could come and talk and tell their stories and what happened to them and their families. Unfortunately, most of the survivors are either gone or they cannot really talk anymore. And we have to make sure that all these stories don't go away, that people will keep on hearing them, listening, hopefully also learning. And one of the ways to do it is with the instruments. Those instruments were there, the owners were there, we have their stories and legacy, and music has lots of power in many, many ways, for many, many things, and we are trying to use this power also for education.
Very cool. Stephen, I'm going to turn to you. Why did you feel like it was important to bring this project to Jacksonville?
For many reasons. First of all, to a lot of what Avshi mentioned, but it also, these violins collectively have a very powerful story of resilience and also hope. And the moniker for this is building bridges through the power of music, since we are a symphony. And again, as Avshi said, music can be a very powerful educator. And though many of the original owners of these instruments are no longer alive, their spirit and their souls and hope lives through them. And from them, we can learn about what's happening around the world with anti-Semitism. Sadly, there is a rise in anti-Semitism, in racism, Islamophobia. And through this project, we hope to tell people that there is great hope and that together as a community, we can learn from the past.
Wow. Does this have special or personal significance for you?
I am Jewish, and most of my father's parents came from Russia in the 1920s. My mother's grandparents came from Lithuania. My brother has done research in Poland. We probably did lose family members in the Holocaust, but I'm not directly aware of that. But of course, as someone who is Jewish, and there's only 13 million of us left in the world, so it has great importance.
Avshi, I was on your website, and every instrument has a story, and you've attached some of the stories to the instruments. Do any stand out to you specifically, or are there specific stories that you carry with you?
So honestly, I tell you, no. I think that all the stories are very important, and I don't think that I should say whose story is more important than the others. I think they're all very important. They all tell us a lesson, and they represent many different people, many different aspects, many different things that happened during the war. There were so many tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, people involved during the war during these years, and the amount of stories is simply endless, and they are all very, very important.
The first violin was brought to your father in the 80s?
In 1979.
Wow. What can you tell us about that?
So this violin belonged to a guy who played in Auschwitz on the way to the gas chambers. He survived the war and he immigrated to South Africa, and he did not have any family, and he gave it to a guy who worked for him as a gift. And he brought the violin to my father, and when my father opened it, he saw lots of ashes inside. Now, if you heard testimonies, especially from Auschwitz, they always said that there was lots of ashes in the air from the crematorium, which was working 24/7. And ashes would go into the violin, like any other dust goes into a violin. Also, the ashes found their way into the violin. And when my father opened that violin, there was lots of ashes inside. He took it out, he restored the violin, gave it back to the new owner, and his son is playing it until today, as far as I know. But that was the very first violin that my father repaired that had a direct connection, basically, to the war. It took him almost 20 years to go back and repair this kind of instruments when we started getting instruments in 1999.
What is that process like of restoration? What are some of the challenges you face with these, not only older instruments, but that have been through the Holocaust?
So we are repairing all the instruments. The work is very much the same, although most of the instruments which were played in the camps and ghettos, they are very, very simple because the Nazis confiscated all the really good stuff. Unlike some of the other instruments that we will have for repair, those instruments, some of them were played outside in rain and snow, so the varnish work is a little bit different than regular violin restoration that people will play at home or in a hall. Other than that, it's very, very similar. The inside work, the crack repairs, the replacement of some of the parts, like fingerboards and pegs and the bridge and sound post and other things, it's basically the same like in every other violin.
Steve, we said at the beginning of the segment that the performance is February 15th, but you have free events people can come to before. What are they, and how can folks register?
Sure. Thank you. Great question. We wanted to do more than just put on a performance where our musicians will actually play some of these instruments. And I should add that I believe 70 of the instruments will be on display in the lobby of the center outside of Jacoby Symphony Hall. So that's very important. And the stories that Avshi mentioned will be next to each of the instruments. We are having a series of educational opportunities on February 10th at 7 p.m. at the University of North Florida. And that program is sponsored by the Together Strong Community Fund. On February 11th at 7 p.m. at the Jacksonville Public Library, and then on February 12th at 5 p.m. at the Temple Congregational Havat Chesed Temple. And all of those are open to the public. You just have to go to our website to register, which is jaxsymphony.org, jaxsymphony.org to register. Avshi will be one of the speakers at each of these events. Stacey Goldring, who's the founder of Search for Identity, will be involved.
I love her.
She's fantastic. Cecilia Crystal, a Holocaust survivor and volunteer. Patrick Nolan, who's a professor of history at the University of North Florida and an expert on the Holocaust. And then Dr. Marianne Rice, who is our VP for Music Education and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives, will be moderating the program. We think that we wanted to bring this program here, again, as I mentioned earlier, because there's a sad rise in anti-Semitism. And our primary sponsor, Brenda and Jean Walchuk, who are Jewish, said this needs to be for more than just the Jews in the community, because frankly, we're not going to learn anything more than we already know and that we've been taught. And so we reached out to the entire community. We have an advisory council that is comprised of community leaders. We have, as I mentioned, Elizabeth Anderson from One Jack, Cecilia Crystal from the Jewish Family and Community Services, Dr. Darby, who is on the Symphony Board, Miriam Feist, Jewish Federation, Rabbi Glasser from the congregation from the temple, Stacey Goldring, Elise Gustafson, who is an Episcopal priest, Dr. Courtney Kokolowski from Jacksonville University, Ann Lafrano, who's a board member, Patricia McElroy, who runs the Weistar Foundation, and herself, she has a PhD in divinity from Yale, Isaiah Oliver, who is the president of the Community Foundation, Leor Spring, and Brenda Walchuk. So we reached out to the entire leaders in the community, leaders in the faith community, and they will be giving, some of these people, their names I just read, will be giving readings. Yeah, so there will be music during the concert and readings. So it's an opportunity for people to come, listen, ask questions, and again, it's February 10th, 11th, and 12th, and then the concert's on the 15th.
I'm going to leave everyone with one last question. What do you hope people take away from this performance?
I think an understanding of what happened in the past, a desire to never see that repeated, to listen to the readings carefully, and because if you are ever put in the situation where you're experiencing and observing things, the question will be asked, what will you do? Are you just going to sit as a bystander, or are you going to take action? And so we hope that people in the community will take action if they see things, speak out when you see anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and racism. And we really believe, as Avshi said, that music brings us together, and that the Jacksonville Symphony plays a very important role in this community in bringing people together.
Well, Avshalom Weinstein and Stephen Libman, thank you so very much. We'll be right back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.